Welcome to episode 40 of the Going for Broke Outdoors podcast, a podcast by an outdoorsman for other outdoorsmen. I'm your host, Jeremy Gillespie. On today's episode, I welcome Ethan Escue to the show. Ethan is a West Virginia native who moved to Missouri in 2023. And in 2022, Ethan killed 6 bucks across multiple states. And in 2023, he killed 5 more, including a great early season high country mule deer. In this episode, we recap Ethan's 2023 season. We talk about the tactics he uses for tackling new terrain. We talk a lot about mindset and how important it is when the conditions get tough. And there's a lot of great takeaways in this episode. Hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Uncle Lou at Stealth Outdoors for helping to make this podcast possible. Check out Stealth Outdoors at www.stealthoutdoors.com. Seasons are closing across most of the Midwest, and the off-season is a great time to rehab your gear. Head over to Stealth Outdoors to pick up some climbing stick wraps, cam buckle covers, platform cable wraps, or stealth strip rolls for all of your miscellaneous silencing needs. Visit www.stealthoutdoors.com to silence your gear and to place an order today. And now, on to the podcast. All right, today I'm joined by a repeat guest, Ethan Escue. Ethan was on episode 31. Ethan, how you doing today?
Doing good, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on again. I'm excited for the conversation this evening.
Yeah, appreciate you joining and wanted to have you on because you had an amazing 2023 season. So we're going to skip the who you are and how'd you get into hunting stuff. If anybody wants to check that out, they can check out episode 31. But let's get right into the meat and potatoes and started off your year with a really awesome velvet high country mule deer. So talk to me first. What factors do you consider when you're looking at a travel hunt like that? How do you pick a state and a unit? What are you thinking about when you're deciding on that?
You know, I've done quite a few travel hunts, mostly out west, and it really just depends on it's various factors. Like some of them, it's just the country you want to hunt. Some of them, it's the species you want to hunt. Some of them, it's I have time off in this slot. What can I go hunt? For this one specifically, it was more of what do I want to hunt and where do I want to hunt them. Mule deer has become my favorite species, and the high country has become my favorite terrain. And this is my 3rd year in a row doing a high country mule deer hunt, and it's the first one I've been successful on. And I accept that extremely humbly because it's very, very difficult. And but once I started doing it, I just knew that this was probably going to be my favorite hunt. Was just high country mule deer. There's nothing more exhilarating to me than being up at high elevations on the tops of the mountains chasing big velvet mule deer with my bow. I mean, I know this is super cliche, but it just feels like that's something that I'm meant to do. But again, up until this year, I had never been successful. So what I was looking at the points that I had in different states because I've been building up some points for some years now. So looking at the points that I have, was looking at my schedule. I was monitoring the normal stuff, droughts, winter conditions in various states from the past year, and then you just start dialing it in. Looking at harvest statistics. And the big thing for me, honestly, is looking at country. I have not applied or not hunted a lot of units that have good statistics that when I look at a map, it just doesn't fit my style. I think that once you kind of get experience, you can kind of maybe hunt what on paper is a lesser unit, but if it plays to your style of hunting, then you can try to find success far above the average in that given unit. So that was, I was looking at country a lot with this hunt. I shot that mule deer in Colorado. I mean, I shot him over 12,000 feet, and pretty much if you do that, it's pretty much going to be in Colorado. So, Colorado is an awesome state for mule deer. I think everybody knows that at this point. And it's an awesome state for the high country. They have the best high country. Well, you could argue that for certain factors, but as far as like the highest high country, they definitely have the highest high country, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to hunt like really high elevation, really push myself, get into some really nasty terrain, and just find, a big mature deer. And I wasn't out there looking for a giant. I just wanted to find a good mature deer in that country, and that's what I was going for. So that's what led me to picking the unit that I did, was just kind of considering my own personal goals for this specific hunt and then reviewing, all the different units that I could draw at my point level, and just continuously narrowing that down until I kind of made my decision to put my application in.
No, that's awesome. A lot of great tips there, and I think that's important to consider as what do you want to do, right? Like for me, I tell people this all the time. A lot of the reason I hunt isn't for the animals, it's for the adventure. And it sounds like that's at least part of the reason for you too. So you want to pick a terrain or a species or both that kind of complements the adventure you're looking for. And I think it's important to realize why you hunt, and that'll guide a lot of the decisions, I think.
Right, 100%. Yeah, I've been on hunts before, um, where, I've actually passed opportunities, whether it be an actual animal in range, or maybe it's a stalk on a deer, or an elk, or an antelope. But if it you have actually passed opportunities that the setting just didn't feel right, and it's kind of counterintuitive, because I do also like, I'm not I'm one of those guys that, like, when I go on a hunt, I'm going out there to kill the animal. The adventure and is a massive part of it, but once I'm out there actually hunting, 99% of the time I've put myself in that area for the experience and for the adventure, but once I'm there, it's all about getting that kill. I kind of just go into kill mode and try to be as much of a predator as possible. But sometimes, you'll catch something, like sometimes you're driving down the road and you might spot a pretty good buck. He's bedded like 40 yards off the road. It's like, well, is that really the experience that I want? You know what I mean? Like, so I've had situations like that before that I've kind of let go. But um yeah, man, like on this mule deer hunt specifically, like that's just been the dream of mine, is to kill uh a really good mature deer high on top of the mountain early season with my bow. And you know, went into this hunt with that as my goal, and went in solo. I hunt solo most of the time, and was able to get it done. I found the buck. I'll kind of give the quick summary synopsis, and if you want to pick any questions out of it, go ahead. But
Sure.
I found the buck. Let me think. The day before season, relocating him on the opener. There was other hunters hunting him. The conditions were bad though. They bedded in a bad spot. The weather was bad. Luckily, all of us were smart enough to not move in on the buck, and we actually ended up talking. And it was the only really big deer in the area. Um, and we ended up talking, myself and the other hunters, which was this was just incredible. Usually you're out there, you feel like you're combat bow hunting with people if you run into them, and not always, but if there's a target animal in the area, you typically feel like it's you got to get there before them, and I don't like playing that game, because I like to play my game at my pace with the animal, and I don't like to feel rushed by other people. So, and they kind of felt the same way. So it was really cool to kind of talk, and we kind of worked up this basically deal of like trading days. And this is a really good deer, so we were kind of let's almost help each other uh, get this buck, because he was in a really stalkable base, and that was the perfect part, was really big deer in a super stockable basin. And we kind of collectively said, if we play this really smart, one of us is going to kill this deer, or at least get a shot. So the next day, the second day of season, I was up as, like, I was going to be the first guy to get the stock that day. And just as luck would have it, relocated him. He had crossed into a different basin at night to feed, but at first light, I caught him and his running mates cresting the ridge line and dropping back into the basin that he had been calling home. This buck was a super homebody buck. Ended up bedding him, made a big circle around the basin, well above 12,000 feet. Took off the boots, dropped in on him, waited him out in the sun for maybe, I think it was a couple hours. And then finally, they got up and started milling around. And he fed out behind me, and I was able to get an arrow in him. And it was just the most, you know, well, honestly, I hit him back on that shot. So it was one of those like mixed emotions moments, where it's like this is what I've wanted for years now, like a really really big deer up high elevation. The view was, it was like looked like something that you would see on a postcard, and I just shot the biggest buck of my life with this view right now. It's like the most incredible moment ever. But I hit him a little back, and honestly, what had happened was I felt like I made a really good shot, honestly, but I had gotten hit like right as my shot broke off. I got hit with a gust of wind that hit my bow, and as soon as it's like it's just one of those things, and I shoot a lot, and as soon as my arrow broke, I was like, "That's going right." Like I just knew it, and I hit him, to the right back. Ended up hitting him. He was slightly quartering away. Ended up hitting him in the liver on the exit, so it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Recovered him first thing the next morning, and that's when it all just hit me. Like walking up on him, by far the biggest deer body wise I've ever seen. By far the biggest rack I've ever killed or held myself. Um, and just the views around it, and just like the years, like the experiences of the other high country mule deer hunts and failed stalks and all the lessons learned, and just this giant culmination of things just hit me all at once, and it was uh it was a moment I'll never forget, that's for sure.
And it's easy, and I say this all the time, social media, you see the picture, you smiling, awesome view, giant velvet buck. It's easy to see that and think like, oh, this guy's lucky or things are working out. But I've been following you on Instagram for a while and some of your other adventures, and as well as I do, they don't always go like that. In fact, more often than not, they don't. So tell me some of the lessons you learned those first 2 years that you think helped you, whether that was scouting the terrain, waiting the deer out, gear, any lessons you learned there on those first two high country hunts that you think really helped you get in the game on this one.
Yeah, the number one thing, without a doubt, by far, hands down, is mindset and attitude. um, I I feel like, in those first couple years, I researched just about everything you possibly can about mule deer and about mule deer hunting. I'm one of those guys that like when I get into something, I go head first and don't really think about anything else for a period of time. And that's how I was when I kind of went into my mule deer research. And you can listen to a lot of really good mule deer hunters talk about hunting mule deer, and there's these big like repeatable factors, right? It's like being patient but being aggressive when you need to be, and that's kind of a skill set that needs to be developed for sure. But waiting for the right opportunity, like wait for them to bed, make sure your thermals are good. A lot of times they'll bed and then they'll rebed, so you don't want to watch them bed on their first bed and then just run in there. These are all things that I knew going into my first hunt, even though I hadn't experienced it. I had listened enough, and I knew kind of the elevations that they um, typically preferred, and that can shift a lot based on various factors. But like I knew a lot of this information, right? That first hunt kicked me in the teeth. I backpacked pretty far in solo. It was also my first solo hunt. Um, and it just kicked me in the teeth. I went 5 days, the first 5 days of the hunt alone, without seeing a single antler. And, you know, it's just, I had driven like 2 days across the country. I'd like to fly and rent a car, but where I went, you could not get a rental to. So I had to take my own truck. And, I just got out there, and that first one was just such a kick in the teeth. And I ended up packing out of there after 5 days, packed into a different area, found deer, but they were like on the moon from where I was. There was no water. And it was one of those deals where I was already just beat down and um quite frankly, I just kind of folded in the towel. Like I got hit with a big storm that I found the deer and then went to sleep that night, got hit with this massive storm and I was in a burn and I just it got to like it was so windy. I was sprawled out like a starfish holding my tent down and the dead airspace in the tent was collecting all the soot and dust in the air. So it was all just falling on my face. I had to take my t-shirt off and stretch it across my face to be able to breathe. And I've been, I'm out there for about almost, yeah, pretty much a week at this point, and hadn't went on a single stalk, and I just found deer, but I was questioning if I could even get to them, and I knew there wasn't water, so I was gonna have to pack all this water. And I'll be honest, man, I just kind of cracked and I left, and I told myself back then that I was gonna be okay in the future with my decision back then, and I am because I just didn't have it in me at that point. I just didn't have it in me. Um, but man, you want to talk about like sharpening the axe that is your mind on that hunt. When I got home and I was able to reflect on it a lot, I drove for like 40 hours home. I had a lot of time to reflect on it. Um, the deer just weren't in that first area that I went to, and that's fine. But they were in that second area. They were super far away. But like, if I went there now, I'd go up on, I'd pack water. I would just do whatever I had to do. So I kind of carried that mentality into some of my next hunts with different species. And then last year I went on a solo hunt for high country mule deer. Did 9 days alone in the backcountry on 6 days of food, which was a whole other uh, beast. I wasn't supposed to stay in that long, but I ended up there was no water there either. Ended up collecting rainwater to extend my stay and ration my food. Uh, got stalked by a mountain lion on the last day. It was a crazy hunt, and I came so close on some really big deer on that hunt last year. And the biggest thing was like after about day 7, if I truly felt like if I had enough food, I could just stay out there for months. Like until the snow pushed me out with the deer, I felt like I could just stay up there. It was an awesome experience to kind of reach that, and that's honestly the only time I've ever reached that point. Because you go out and there's always just like a little bit of discomfort, right?
Yep.
But I just reached this point, man. I've been out there for 7 days, hunting these same deer, and just playing my play. Never saw another hunter, and just after like a week, I was just like, man, I could just do this forever. I reached full comfort, and like I said, got so close on a couple really big deer, but just could not pull it off. Um, but again, it was just that mindset, like, you know, because solo hunting messes with your mind. Um, so, dealt with some stuff out there alone. Don't don't have any skeletons in the closet when you go solo hunting because they'll come out rattling hard. Uh, just staying out there is so difficult. And then like grasping the amount of effort that it actually takes to be consistently successful is something that has just developed over the last couple of years. Like the amount of physical effort is almost unimaginable in the regular person's everyday life. Like in my everyday life, the amount of effort that it takes to be successful out there versus the amount of physical effort that I put forth in a regular day is astronomically different. Like it's not even in the same, realm of each other. So learning that was a big thing. So going into this year, I knew mindset wise, I'm going to go as far as I have to go. I'm going to stay as long as I have to stay. There's deer in these mountains, and I'm gonna either kill one or just basically expire my body trying to kill one. Like that was my mindset going in, and paid off. I actually didn't have to stay in there that long. I killed him on the second day of season, my fourth day in the backcountry, so I wasn't in there that long, but um, yeah, that's the biggest lesson learned. Is just mindset, and you can listen to people talk about it like someone can listen to me talk about it right now. You can go listen to all these other guys talk on podcasts and videos about mindset and just attitude and give it everything until you actually kind of experience it and until you get your butt kicked and lick your wounds and keep going back for more, that's just in all Western hunting for me. And I don't know if I'm assuming it's probably the same for you, is just that mindset of just how much effort it actually takes and being okay with being so depleted and exhausted and deteriorated and just keep pushing and pushing till it happens. That's what I've learned anyways.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. The effort part and uh, one of the points you made there, the effort. And I don't think people realize if you haven't solo hunted. And I mean, it seems obvious when you think about it, but like my elk spot I was hunting this year, it was a couple miles in. So I'm getting up, I'm hiking an hour and a half before daylight to get in there where the elk had been at daylight. So that means you're either taking food with you or you're trying to cook something before you eat, before you leave, which means you're getting up even earlier. Where I was at, the action was like the first hour or two, but I was out. So then, and I don't know if this is part of the thing you dealt with too, with mule deer hunting, but the middle of the day, if there's not action, I mean, it gets so boring. What do you do out there all day, right? Like for elk, the action's over for me anyways. It was over by 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then I'm sitting around until 4, 5, 6 in the evening, and you're just doing nothing. You're just trying to pass the time. And this season for me, I started the opening weekend. It was super hot. I hunted solo. I couldn't hardly stand it. I mean, it was like 95 degrees. I was like, what am I doing out here? And by the end of the season, I had 230 miles on, Garmin GPS watch. So a lot of times and depleted. And you're right, man. You start to ask, like, you figure out if you really want it, I guess is the key thing. Do you really want it? And if you do, you'll find a way to keep going. And if you don't, you don't. So
Right. 100%. Yeah. It tests every fiber of your being. And again, it's like all these stereotypical cliche sayings, but like until you live it, it's really how it is out there. It takes everything in you. And you can get lucky and kill stuff without being like that 100%, but to just be consistently a killer, I just feel like that's what it takes, is just this true whatever it takes mindset, and that is just so underestimated by hearing it without living it.
yeah.
Now, I feel like I've lived it, on a handful of hunts where I've kind of pushed myself way past where I thought was possible. And I've got a hunt coming up this spring, a spring bear hunt where I'm probably going to try to push it like considerably harder than I've ever pushed it before. And it's daunting. It's honestly daunting because every time I accomplish something that I didn't think I could do before, I build myself up and then I do it, or I maybe come short, but at least I tried and I learned. Just like I just keep pushing it more and more, and it just keeps being daunting and daunting. But I don't know, man. It's like building a callus. It's like building a callus on your mind, and like obviously physical conditioning is a huge part of that, but like your mind is what stops you. Your mind is what gets you back in the truck and not out there on the mountain. And like just callousing that mind over and over, that's and that can be said for anything, like even whitetail hunting, like just whitetail hunting in general isn't quite as physically demanding, I wouldn't say, but like mentally demanding, I think it is. It's just in a completely different way. It's like callousing your mind. Whitetail hunting is different than callousing your mind for physical exertion in the mountains. It's like a playing chess with your own mind, you know, for whitetails. At least it is for me. And that was, that's something that I had to do with myself constantly this whitetail season. Just battle myself and just kind of stick to the playbook, like just keep putting in effort and just keep scouting new areas and trying to find new bucks and trying to figure, deer out and just keeping at it. It's not that physical exertion, but like mental exertion and just time and effort. Just keep going and going and going and going until success finds itself.
Well, that's a good segue there. You talked about whitetail, so you arrow this giant mule deer buck early September, like the 6th or the 7th, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, it was the third because opening day was the second, so I killed him on the third.
And then roughly a week later, 2 weeks later, you shoot a really good early
Yeah,
season buck
third.
in
Yeah,
Missouri.
13 days later.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second day of Missouri season, I killed the early season whitetail.
And for people that maybe missed that first episode where I had you on, you're from West Virginia originally. You moved to Missouri this year. So walk me through the process of scouting, all new terrain, locating a buck. What kind of methods did you use? Were you onto this buck? And then just your overall experience in the Midwest early season.
Yeah, Midwest early season, glassing. Trail cameras are illegal on the vast majority of public land in Missouri, which was I don't want to say a shock to me, but it was definitely different. Not having trail cameras at my advantage for trying to find an early season buck. So it was pretty much all glassing and also looking for tracks. Tracks was never a huge part of my play in West Virginia. Steep, rocky soil, you know, hard to even find good tracks unless, sometimes like in creek crossings. But out here, after good rains, which was the problem with finding tracks, we were kind of in a drought all summer. So really, the vast majority of my scouting all summer was glassing, glassing slash just bumping deer on purpose. But then as they run away, I raise up my binoculars, so we can just call that glassing too. So,
Sure.
um, but yeah, when I say glassing, I don't mean like sitting in your truck just looking at bean fields only. Yes, I did that, but I kind of took tactics from West Virginia and brought them out here where glassed like a lot of weird stuff, like maybe river bottoms with tall grass and watch bucks, stand up out of their bed or watch power lines and timber or watch just overgrown CRP fields versus the beautiful, green bean field. But I also saw a ton of deer in bean fields, glass them in hay fields. I spent an insane amount of time on whitetail this year, like to the point where looking back on it, it was probably too much, you know. Like realistically, it was probably too much. Like I look back and it's like you really discarded just about everything else in your life for a couple months.
Yeah.
Like in I've said that plenty of times before in my life, but like looking back on this season, truly, I might have pushed it too much. Um, but it did lead to, a pretty comfortable level of success, especially early season. I felt like I had that buck dead before opening day came. Um, so yeah, I found like a ton of deer, right? And then I kept narrowing it down, like which deer did I think was more killable, and not necessarily going for the biggest deer, but basically going for this kind of class of deer where it's like it's the caliber of deer that I want. It meets the caliber that I want to shoot. Now, which one is the most killable? Because the pressure was insane, and I knew the pressure was going to move these deer all around. I basically had, well, I even my schedule. I had 4 days. I had the first 4 days of season to hunt, and then after that, I couldn't hunt for a couple weeks um, because of other stuff in life that was more important. Um, so I basically scouted all summer. Went to Colorado, shot this mule deer, came back, last minute scouting, and I was like, I have to kill a deer in the first 4 days of season, or I'm not going to kill one of these deer. So put a lot of pressure on myself, and ended up, the buck that I was after, like my number one target that I deemed like he's my primary number one out of like the 30. I found like I think it was 27 or 28 shooters, um, and out of all of them, I narrowed it down to like this is the deer I'm going to try to kill first off, and didn't kill him opening day, but I killed him second day. He read the script just like to a T. He came out on the trail where I thought he would at the time I thought he would, and I shot him within 10 feet of where I thought I would, and just like your stereotypical pub or early season play, just spend weeks and weeks and weeks figuring them out and then executing it, and that's my favorite whitetail hunt right there. Like just playing chess before season, and then season comes in, and you lay them on the ground. I absolutely love that.
I want to take a minute to mention huntingbeastgear.com. Co-founded by the big buck serial killer himself, Dan Infalt, Hunting Beast Gear features state-of-the-art manufacturing techniques, the highest quality materials, and innovative designs that have been engineered, field-tested, and refined to perfection by a group of the best mobile hunters on the planet. www.huntingbeastgear.com delivers cutting-edge products, including Beast Gear climbing sticks with weight reduction holes designed to deliver incredible durability in a lightweight stick. Beast Gear climbing sticks also feature non-staggered, inline stacking, and double steps, all in a 2.2-pound package, including the fastening strap. HuntingBeastGear.com has also released the game-changing Beast Gear Hang-On Tree Stand. Designed to be the ultimate hang-on tree stand solution, with over 4 years of prototyping, testing, and refinement, the Beast Gear stand features a 16-inch wide by 29-inch long platform. The stand comes in at an incredible 6.8 pounds, and it does all that without compromising strength or durability. The Beast Gear stand is finished with a long-lasting anodized coating and features grade 8 hardware, high-quality Delrin washers, Beast buttons, and adjustment knobs. For more details and to place your order today, head on over to www.huntingbeastgear.com. Now, back to the podcast. Yeah, and the previous episode, and that's something I wanted to get into, we talked about early season and how several years in a row you killed your target buck on the first day or the second day. And I would say that you're definitely not that you're not good in other areas of the season, but an early season specialist for sure. So for guys that are listening to this, because I think early season, if you don't have it figured out, is one of the tougher times to kill a deer. But I also think it's one of the best times to kill a big deer, especially if you're targeting a single deer. So going into the season, you talked about glassing. What helped you figure out this buck, and why did you think this buck in particular was going to be the most killable?
Yeah, like I said, I was kind of watching and finding and keeping tabs on just a ton of deer. And some deer you just see you'll just see them once. You'll never see them again in the summer. Like I saw a giant typical this year, a couple weeks before season. And as much as I wanted to put all my eggs into that basket, I never saw him again. And with the pressure moving in, I knew I just had to kind of go after a really big deer that I can kill versus like absolute giant that I honestly don't think I have that great of a chance at killing. Maybe I could have, but I'm here to tell you that by far and large, like the chances of me killing that deer were very slim. But man, he was he was special. But yeah, so I just keep finding these deer and I'm routinely checking on them. And I'm doing this every single day after work. I'm driving anywhere from 45 minutes at the closest up to like a little over 2 hours. And I did that, um, like especially once August came around. I think I went, if I had to guess, I would say I probably went 25 to 27 days of August glassing.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's with like I left to go to Colorado, I think August 30th. So cut 1 or 2 days out. Like it was almost every single day of August I was out there scouting, and just the amount of effort, that's what I'm saying. It's just like it was insane. Um, and I narrowed it down to say maybe 6 or 8 bucks that I had a really good pattern. Actually, no, it was more than that. Uh, so another thing is there was multiple really good deer that were in areas that I knew other people were watching them, and I knew that they would have people on them immediately. The minute season came in, I just disregarded those deer. I just walked away. Like there's opportunities to find other deer to kind of play your own game on. So I just disregarded them, even though they were big. Like the one deer was awesome. He was, probably low 50s, mainframe 11 with like a 8-inch inline dagger on the inside of his main beam. Just like a super cool deer. Like never seen a big giant dagger on the inline like that on a whitetail. But man, he was living like at the front of the property, coming out into a bean field right next to a gravel road where on any given night, you could roll up and see 3 different trucks look at that deer every night. It's like I'm not even going to put stock in that deer. If that was the only deer I had, then yeah, I'm going to try to outsmart the other hunters. But with the opportunities that exist, like I'm just going to go find another deer that I can play my own game on. So once you kind of exclude those deer, the deer that are patterned but are going to get pressured, and then you exclude the deer that are not patterned. Now you're down to the deer that you have pretty patterned and you don't think are going to get pushed like insanely hard right off the bat. And then once you have those deer, now I start kind of narrowing it down. Like, how often does he do this? Like, some deer will hold a pattern loosely. Some deer are more like super tight with their patterns. And then like to give you an example, my top 2 deer. Number one, the deer I killed, he wasn't as consistent as number 2 as far as when he came out, but where he came out, like extremely consistent. Never saw him use another entrance all summer. One time all summer, saw him use a different entrance. So I knew that if I could get a shot to that location and he came out, I would have a shot. Whereas my number 2, I saw him every day I ever looked for him. Every single day I ever went to look for that deer, I saw him. But he had 3 different locations that he would use. So now you're kind of juggling, and there was no rhyme or reason to it. So now you're juggling 33% on what where he's going to come out, what bedding area he's going to use. Like the deer I ended up killing, it's like if he comes out, I'm going to kill him right here. And he was pretty consistent coming out. But here's the thing that made me kind of make my final decision. Every single time there was any bit of front whatsoever, like a tiny cold front, precipitation, anything, he came out. And leading into opening day, there was a tiny front with the next day precipitation. And I was like, that deer's going to show one of these 2 days and I'm going to kill him, So it was like all eggs in that basket for the first 2 days. And I was kind of surprised he didn't show the first day, honestly. But the next day was cool, had some precipitation. Never did I not see that deer on a rainy day in the summer. For whatever reason, I've never put a big precipitation correlation with an individual deer until this one. But if it was like raining or sprinkling, he was every single day he would come out early for whatever reason. I don't know why, but there was definitely a correlation that I put together on that deer. So when it rained around 2 p.m. the second day, just like a light sprinkle, 30 minutes. I was like, that deer's dying. Like he's dead. And then he came out, not super early, but he had shed velvet and stuff, but 15, 20 minutes before dark, and I was able to get the arrow in him. So it was just, that was just like the chess match, and then just said checkmate, and that's by far my favorite style of hunting. And I agree with you that if you don't have early season figured out, it's tough. Like it's really, really tough. The only other time that's tougher is late season if you don't have it figured out. But if you have it figured out, like give me opening day. Just get like that's by far my favorite time to kill them. It's opening day or the second or third or fourth day.
Yeah, well, and you brought up some interesting points there about why you ruled out some of those bucks that might have been far as score, bigger score, or higher age class or whatever. But I think you went about it real smart because as well as I do, you don't have to see those guys in the trucks out messing with stands or putting out bait or doing whatever they're doing. It's going to happen. And that buck's going to get boogered up most likely in the days leading up to the season, not even the opener. So I think that was real smart. And some of the things that you talked about, again, going back to that first podcast, if people haven't listened to that, we talked a lot about like your glassing techniques, especially in West Virginia, doing some of the power lines and hill country and stuff that's a little more unconventional. And sounds like you utilize some of those tactics in Missouri too, and probably finding some bucks that would be overlooked by, the average guy that's driving the block looking at the bean field. So pretty interesting there.
Yeah. You know, I definitely saw a lot of other guys glassing bean fields. You know, that's just what people do in the Midwest, right?
Yeah.
But like glassing that weird stuff, never saw anybody else doing it. And I think that I found deer that I didn't kill. I didn't kill them this year, but I found them, and I'll almost guarantee you that leading up to early season, that nobody else was finding those deer because I can't run trail cameras and there was nobody glassing them. So you know, it's just it's a really good tool to kind of keep in the toolbox. That's a little unconventional that I learned out of necessity that you can now apply to other places. So it's kind of cool to do that.
Well, moving into the rut, you just stacked the deer up this year, so you got a nice buck during the early part of November too. What's the story on that one there? That was in Missouri also?
Yeah. So that was also Missouri. I I I shot one of my deer this year on a managed hunt. So it gives me a bonus tag.
Okay.
Just to clear up any legal issues.
Sure.
Missouri's a 2 buck state if you don't have that. But I did have that. So I spent a ton of time, like a month, solid month, scouting this big public area and just like continuously checking new areas, continuously scouting, hunting a little bit like through all of October, but 99% scouting, just scouting, 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 scouting. Just kept narrowing down areas, crossing off bad areas, putting good areas in the back of my pocket. And
Real
um,
quick, when you say you're crossing off bad areas, what do you use or what are you looking at to rule an area out? And when you say good area, what sign are you seeing or what notes are you taking that think, oh, I might want to come back here once things heat up a little bit?
yeah, so the bad areas was typically hunting pressure and human sign, big deterrents for sure. The good areas, basically areas that it seemed like people were not hunting. And keep in mind, like all this is brand new, first season.
Sure.
And I come to find out, like some of those good areas ended up getting hammered with pressure in the rut. Like it was a ghost town in October and looked great, but public land in the Midwest in the first 2 weeks in November, there's people everywhere. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but it's easier to cross off. Like I'm pretty confident when I say that's a bad area. I'm not as confident all the time when I say that's a good area. Um, because that happens. Like sometimes it looks good and then pressure hits in November and just ruins it. But so that's what I was doing. Like I was basically finding where people are and are not hunting. That was a big part. Looking for buck sign, looking for bucks themselves. I'm still glassing a lot all through season. I'm glassing. And man, I was all through October into early November, I was sleeping in my truck 3 to 4 nights a week. So I was out in the field 3 to 4 days a week. I work the job I have right now. It's a rotating 4 by 10 schedule, so it allows me a little bit of. I work longer on my days at work, but it allows me a little more time off. But I never took a single vacation day. It was just all my work schedule. But 3 to 4 nights a week, I was sleeping in my truck away from home, and for 6 weeks. So again, so 3 or 4 nights a week, that's 3.5 average. That's half of every week. I'm not sleeping in my bed. I'm sleeping in my truck trying to find a dang deer to go shoot. So,
Sounds
you know,
familiar.
yeah, right. So, you know, and I just, man, I was on this big public area, just spinning my wheels. And it just felt like that's what it was. I was just spinning my wheels. Like was finding a lot of decent deer. I knew there were some bigger ones around, but I just wasn't getting on anything, wasn't seeing anything, wasn't it just never seemed like it was like there, like it was just so but then it comes to this conundrum, now it's November and I've just put 5 solid weeks of scouting into like this one, not like when I say area, I'm not talking like one little spot, I'm talking like a multi-thousand acre area. And I just it just I don't know. It just felt like I was spinning my wheels big time. And so I had some conversations with some mutual friends of ours, Justin Wright and Andy May. I was talking to them, and we're all kind of talking and stuff, and I was bouncing my thought process off both of them and kind of gathering feedback. And I kind of like inside my instinct was like, go somewhere else. Like it's not happening here. You've put 5 weeks in, you haven't killed one, go somewhere else. And both of those guys, which, both those guys I highly, highly, highly respect, they both had kind of similar sentiments. Like just bounce. Like it's the rut. Like something can happen anywhere at any time, just bounce. So I kind of made my decision, drove through the night to a completely new area, never set foot there ever, pulled up just before, like 12:30 at night, slept a couple hours and then got up, started heading in with that gray light, just kind of got all the gear on my back. And I was just kind of still hunting slash scouting slash there was some big hub systems I wanted to check out. And long story short, I ended up bumping a buck that was locked on a doe in the timber on a hardwood ridge, and he was big, and I split him up. He went to the right, the doe went to the left, up the ridge, and then a little buck chased another hot doe past me. So I was like, I'm in deer. Like this is it right here. Look at a map. This spot looks terrible. Well, it's not right now. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's one of those like if you just look at a topo map, I'm never setting up there ever. But like that's what I like. I like when it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense, but there's two hot does right here. So I was like that the buck I bumped is gonna come back in some way or fashion. He's not just gonna leave and never come back to a hot doe that he was just locked on. And in some way or shape or form, he's gonna come back to this area. So I got and set up where those two hot doe trails crossed, where I could basically shoot the X. And about 4 or 5 hours later, he came back in below me. Couldn't you could it was kind of funny because you could honestly almost tell he was mad. Like he was raking and scraping. I think he was visibly mad that he couldn't find his doe. Um, and I ended up calling at him kind of aggressively, and he just turned into a different animal. Like he did stuff that I've never seen or heard a deer do. I mean, it sounded like someone was driving a D10 dozer through the woods. I mean, dude, I'm serious. He ripped the woods apart. I snort wheezed at him and raked a branch like super aggressive in the tree that I was in, to the point where it was almost like stupid aggressive to call at him like that. But I knew how old he was and I knew the mood that he was in and the behavior he was exhibiting below me. So I started with a grunt and it didn't do that much. And I was just like, I just gotta just tick him off. And he just went berserk. I mean, he made literally probably 15 to 20 scrapes within 75 yards of me.
Oh wow.
And probably somewhere between 5 and 10 different rubs. He was kind of in some thick stuff, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly how many rubs he made. After the fact, I went down there. He rubbed a cedar tree that was bigger around than my thigh, like almost as big around as my waist, and just shredded it. There was some smaller, like 2 inch trees that he had like ripped up and broke off. I mean, it was like I was like, oh my gosh, this if I was scouting and found this, I would have a heart attack. But like the deer that just made this is laying dead in the ravine, 200 yards away. So yeah, man, he ended up coming right up in, and I got an arrow in him and killed him. And he's definitely my biggest bodied whitetail, like for sure. Probably at the very least ties for my oldest, if not my oldest. Most mass on a deer I've ever shot. Just an absolute brute of a buck. And it was on like a super heavily pressured piece. So I mean, it's just a testament, again, of mindset to know when to keep pushing, but to know when to change. And that was a huge learning experience for me because, you know, even though that's kind of what my instinct was telling me and that's what my buddies were telling me, part of me was still like, man, you're leaving like where you have all this intel. Like you've got 20 different spots in your Rolodex. You've scouted all these, it's like, why leave that now at prime time? Like it's November, when I killed him like November 4th, I think. It's like, why leave that now? But it wasn't happening. So you just got to change it and go to a new area. And then I jump that buck. And it's one of those things where I think some guys would jump that buck, look at a map and say, oh, this spot doesn't look any good. And say, oh, that terrain feature 400 yards away looks really good. And they would go over there and hunt that. I think a lot of guys would do that because I almost had to kind of fight the urge to do that. We're so used to looking at maps and we're so used to looking at our phones to tell us where to kill a deer, right? But when you're out there, don't look at your phone. If you're witnessing stuff in front of you, you have to just play off of what you're seeing. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big mistake that at least I think that a lot of guys probably make, and I've made it before. Like I'm guilty, like in my younger years, of seeing stuff and being like, oh, okay, there's a shooter here. Now let me literally leave where he's at to go to a feature or something that a forum or a magazine or an article says makes sense. And it's like I've made that mistake, and I think a lot of guys make that mistake, and you just have to see what's actually happening and hunt accordingly.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. There's nothing better than a visual, and especially during the rut with a doe lockdown. If you know your deer biology, which a lot of guys are getting pretty educated these days, you know that doe's into heat for 24, 48 hours. And I always gamble that it's early in that, right? If I'm seeing a buck locked down with a doe, maybe they're breeding, but I just always gamble that they're not. And this buck right there, prime example, I jumped that buck in a spot kind of like what you're talking about. Didn't make a whole lot of sense terrain wise. It was actually quarter mile from a parking lot. Um, in hindsight, it made a little bit of sense, but I jumped that buck and I went back in the next day because he was locked down with the doe. It was November 6th, and I killed him on the 7th. Went back and in 2 draws over from where I jumped, and that the day before I ended up killing him. So yeah, trust the visual, right? Like don't overthink it. If there's a buck there and there's a doe in heat, like what else do you want? And like I said, I always assume that they're going to be there for one more day, and they're in that area for a reason. I've talked about this in other podcasts, and I would imagine you've seen it too. These older bucks, they know somehow how to run does into areas that I think are more difficult for other bucks to scent check, which like in prairie country, you see them in fence rows a lot. You never see a mature buck in a fence row, or an open one like that. He's pushing them out there because the other bucks don't want to come out in the open to scent check, and he's hiding there. Or I've seen him push him up against water a lot because it's harder for a buck to get downwind of a big pond or something, or a lake. So you see him end up in these weird spots. So I think when you see that, they're there for a reason. And the whole point I'm getting is if you jump them, they're likely going to be in that area or a very similar area, not too far away.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like for me, I've as far as whitetail, I haven't hunted in prairie for whitetail specifically. Um, Almost everything I've ever hunted has been pretty timbered. Even a lot of the stuff here in the Midwest, like I'm hunting primarily timbered up stuff. So seeing that isn't as easy as like glassing them going out to the fence rows and hedgerows like you're talking, right? So I keep having to remind myself they're there for a reason. And you know what? Even if they're not there for a reason, they're still there. So
Right.
it's like it doesn't really matter if there's a reason or not. It's like you don't have to have a reason to shoot them. You just have to have them there. And that's what I kind of told myself on this buck. It's like I don't know why he's on this ridge with this doe, but this is the last place that he just lost his doe, and a small buck just chased another hot doe out of the drainage that he just went into. So there's another hot doe stream coming up to this exact same spot. There's no way I'm not sitting right here. So I just climbed up in a tree and just waited. And like I said, hours later, he came back in doing the exact same thing that I thought. Interestingly enough, he had made a big loop around me. came in from 180 degrees from the opposite direction, which doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think he was trying to get away from me and go look for that doe and didn't find her. This is all theory, but I think he was making
Sure.
a loop to get away from me to go find where that doe went. And when he didn't find her, he was backtracking to where he actually lost her. Um, that's just my theory. That's kind of what makes sense in my head. Um, but he never did get to go find her again. So
No, that story again, great illustration of don't overthink it. And I've been in a similar situation. Sometimes your tried and true spots just aren't panning out. Not that you necessarily have tried and true spots in Missouri being a newcomer, but things that looked good that you think would work out. If they're not working, like make it happen. Find some action, kind of like you were talking your first mule deer hunt, right? A couple days in
right,
there, nothing's going on. Get out of there, make it happen somewhere else.
right.
Well, then, so that's $3. So you got a giant mule deer down, two nice whitetails, and then going into gun season, I believe one more Missouri buck. That's probably the managed buck, and then a West Virginia. So let's wrap up with some gun talk. And one of the things that I've seen and I like it, I would consider you to be a pretty diehard bow hunter. I'm sure that's your forte and what you'd prefer to do. But I think some guys take that to the absolute extreme and don't gun hunt at all. And I don't know. I've done that before, but gun hunting's pretty fun too. So talk to me about your rifle hunts this year and how those came together.
Yeah, so I'm definitely more of a bow hunter. Um, I just love the bow. I just love archery. Like even if I didn't hunt, which I can't imagine that, but if I did not hunt, I would still shoot archery. And I did. I shot competitive archery in college, and I love archery. But I also grew up gun hunting, and I hunt. I'm just a hunter, like I just like to hunt. And so, I'll gun hunt. I had not, before this year, I hadn't killed a whitetail buck with a rifle in 9 years, um, since high school. So, like, it had been a long time since I'd shot a buck with a rifle. Um, because I just didn't really do it. Like, usually in West Virginia, I had my tags filled with my bow and just kind of used rifle season as more of a like maybe shoot a doe, hang out with buddies, kind of have more of that camaraderie style of hunting. But out here, okay, now it's rifle season. I've got another tag. Um, I started trying to bow hunt in archery only areas. That was kind of my original strategy. Because I was thinking, okay, all this pressure is going to be going around, even on private. Like the amount of gun hunters in Missouri is unreal. So maybe they'll get pushed into this archery only public. So I got way deep into this archery only public, like 2 miles, which is pretty deep for Midwest. And man, I hunted it for 3 days and like kind of bouncing around back in that area and got walked in on by gun hunters every single day. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me, man.
In the
Like I just
archery
kept,
only area,
yeah,
you
yeah,
missed the
yeah, yeah.
memo, huh?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh gosh, you gotta be kidding me. Anyways, I go home, go back to work, and I'm just sitting at work and I'm thinking, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go gun hunting. And I was like, I've got some spots up my sleeve that, when I was scouting all fall, found some areas that I thought would be free, like prime during gun season for the sake of the refuge that the areas offer. So, I'm looking at some maps and looking at wind direction and thinking where pressure is going to come from. And I kind of put this plan together in my head. The best area that I had in my head was this massive thicket that bordered kind of a super thick river bottom with like 9 foot tall river cane grass, like just stuff that if you wanted to not get shot and you stayed in it during daylight hours, you're never going to get shot ever. So I was like, there's going to be deer in there. I know there will be. It's just, can I get a shot? Will they be in there before daylight? Lots of variables, but I knew that that was going to offer refuge. So again, I had to kind of take care of some stuff at home. So I did that and then ended up leaving the next morning at like, I think I left at 1:30 in the morning. Like I slept like 2 hours up and left and drove like multiple hours and then hiked in over a mile to the spot. And it was just a nasty morning, like kind of not sleeting, but just like kind of a misty air and high wind and just a nasty day. And I get set up. Um, I get set up like right at gray light. I pull up my binos and I start scanning. And immediately, like 30 seconds into glassing, I spot a small buck, a little 6 point, and he's working the transition, going back to bed in the tall stuff, reading the script, and I'm just kind of panning, following him from right to left. And as I'm panning, I see in the background this just big wide rack turn, like 20 yards behind him. And I was like, oh man, that's a big deer. So then started about 10 or 15 minutes of absolute chaos. I kept trying to get on him with my scope, and it was it was still, not full light. It was shooting light, but it was not full light, and it's kind of thick over there. I'm trying to keep getting glimpses of his rack and wait for him to step out, and then kind of wraps around the hill. So I sprint up the hill I'm on, sprint out. It was just absolute utter chaos. Just me running around trying to get a shot at this deer, like, um, and eventually he just kind of disappears. Like at one point, I sprint out this hill, I range him. He's kind of across the valley, which was another cool thing because I was like up on this ridge, kind of above a cliff, shooting across this like little valley. So it was a really cool setting. Range him, and I'm trying to get down and get a rest, and I look back up, and he's just gone. And there's no way he smelled me or heard me because of the weather conditions. But he was only about 20 yards away from that thick stuff, so I can only imagine he went and laid down in it. Um, but he just kind of disappeared. But then all of a sudden, I see another buck, another good buck, a buck that I probably would have shot had I not just seen this really big deer. And he comes back, works the transition like just like the big one in that little 6 point, and goes right into that tall grass. And I'm like, okay, this is perfect. Like they're doing exactly what I thought they would. It's 20 minutes into daylight now. I've seen 3 bucks. And I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and watch this all day. Like if they get up and mill around, there's a couple spots that's like low enough that you can shoot into that grass. I was like, maybe I'll get a crack at them in there, milling in the middle of the day. Maybe they'll leave before dark. I've got all this kind of turning in my head of how I'm going to sit here all day, and then I look up and I'm like, big buck. And there's another one. There's another big one coming down that transition, and he's standing over there, and again just scrambling, trying to get an opening, and then finally I get sat down. This was kind of a difficult shot, and I definitely would say I wouldn't say that I'm inept with a rifle, but like I know my bow so intimately, right? Like I shoot all the time, and like admittedly, I don't go out there and shoot thousands of rounds a year out of my rifle. I shoot thousands upon thousands of arrows, but with a rifle, I don't. So I'm trying to make this hard shot, and I'm kind of sitting down, resting on a fallen log, and shooting through like a softball-sized hole in the canopy that's in front of me to go across the valley. I was just like, if I shoot perfect, he's done, right? So I just calmed the breathing down and touched it off, and I dropped him right there. And I was just so excited, and then it hit me. I was like, I don't even know what he is. Like I just saw big frame to the point where, like when I saw it, it was he's a shooter. Like there was no doubt in my mind. And when I got over there and found him, I was super super pleased with him. He's a mainframe 10, the nastiest bases on any deer I've ever shot. He's got matching like devil tines that come out along his forehead off both burrs, just like a super cool deer. And I was just like, I just felt so fortunate, And I was tagged out, all on public land, new state, 3 bucks, and just kind of uh wrote the final chapter on the book for this year. It felt like, and it was just awesome. Like again, the plan came together. First first buck I shot 9 years with a rifle, gun season on public land in the Midwest, like the most pressure you could imagine, basically, and to be able to figure it out and not just see this one buck and kill him, but also see like multiple other good bucks. And then as I was walking over to recover my deer, another pretty good buck popped out and did the same thing. So it was like I was in them big time. And that's like I was telling some buddies, like I feel like this time of year when there's this much pressure going on, you're just either in them or you're not. Like you got to find where they are going where other people aren't. And like that's where they're going to be. And that's where they were in this instance. So to kind of play all that out in my head and then go in and execute and just have it like just play out to a T was just such an incredible feeling. Again, it just kind of goes back to like that chess match thing. Like that's what fires me up more than anything else. It's just figuring them out and playing the chess match. Um, it was just like it was just a great feeling. So then I got him packed out and yeah, and then I was tagged out here, and which was kind of a weird feeling after just going to now be like, okay, I can't go
Now what?
anymore. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now what? So now I was like, that was when was that? What day did I shoot him? November 18th or 19th or something. I'd have to look. It was kind of like mid late November. Um, and then I decided like very last minute that in like a couple days, like 4 days later, I was going to drive back to West Virginia and see some family for Thanksgiving. So drove back to and of course I was going to try to sneak some hunts in on some of
Sure.
the old on the old jaunts back there, of course. So I actually had two deer in mind in West Virginia, and it was rifle season in West Virginia, which again I typically don't rifle hunt, but it's like, man, I know this property. I know both these deer. If I have the advantage of the rifle, I might be able to get this done in like the couple short days that I had. So I had this plan figured out. There's two deer. We've got history with both of them. Uh, there was a 10 point and a super wide 8 point. And the 8 point I had passed um, 2 years prior with a bow. And this is on a buddy of mine's property who also hunts. So he's kind of sending me trail cam pictures and I'm saying, hey, like I saw that deer over here last year, drop a camera over there because he was trying to get on them. And, we've always shared information on deer out there and hunt it together. And, so I go back and basically I have this plan that's again, not overcomplicating things. There's two big doe bedding areas. And I know for a fact that both of these bucks check does in both of these doe bedding areas during the rut. And in between them is a long gas line, right? So it's maybe 60 yards wide. So with a rifle, you basically have this big long shooting lane in between these two massive doe bedding areas. So you don't really have to narrow it down to the specific trail, right? You've got a couple hundred yards of uh, availability there, like wherever they end up crossing, if they do. So I went there the night before Thanksgiving. I literally got back into town, and like before I even stopped and saw anyone, I went to the woods and went out, got out there and hunted. I only hunted for like 2 hours, I think. I got there like right before dark and ran out. Saw some deer, but not either of my target deer. And then the next morning, Thanksgiving morning, I went out and about an hour and a half into the hunt, that wide eight just read the script perfect. Just came out of the one bedding area, was crossing into the other, shot him, put him down, and I was just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like I was sitting over 1,000 miles away yesterday, drumming this up in my mind, and here I am, and I've got this buck dead. Like it was just, and that was more so. I contribute that way more to just knowing that property like the back of my hand. Like I've hunted that property for years. And I know it like the back of my hand. I know how the deer move. I know where the concentrations of bedding is. I know it extremely well. And I just knew, and we usually don't rifle hunt it. We usually only bow hunt it. But for this instance, I was like, I'm only going to be in towns for a couple of days. I'm going to rifle hunt it. Um, and he read the script. Perfect, man. Just a good solid 4-year-old West Virginia buck. Really wide, just a cool rack. Um, and was able to punch a tag on him. And that's the last deer hunt I've went on, was Thanksgiving. Which was also really cool because like moving away from home and then getting to go home, shoot that deer, show friends and family, hang out with friends and family, all on Thanksgiving before the Thanksgiving dinner. That was like a really cool experience. So it was it was definitely an experience to remind me to be thankful, as cliche as that sounds.
No, and I mean, you talked about a little bit the rifle hunting with friends. I like that aspect of it too, the camaraderie. It's a different thing. Like bow hunting in a group it's challenging and it rarely works out. But with the rifle hunting, I feel like it just lends itself better to to having a group and like that camp atmosphere. So that's always fun. And I mean, you had a tremendous, amazing year. Is this maybe the best year you've ever had or close? It's got to be, right?
Yeah, this year, last year. Last year I shot 6 whitetail bucks and a mule deer buck. So I shot more bucks last year, but I would say like the quality of experience. I don't know. Last year I shot my biggest whitetail and the most bucks I've ever shot in a season. This year I shot my biggest mule deer. I don't know. The last 2 seasons have just been beyond what I really thought I would ever have. So I'm just super thankful, for all my seasons, obviously, but especially these last two have just been kind of like the stars have aligned.
Yeah, and that's something we didn't talk about. Obviously, you're a super skilled hunter, and if anybody's listening to this that hasn't listened to our episode, I advise them to go back and listen to that one. But there's always some element of luck, right? Because certain things could go just a little bit wrong or a little bit right, and sometimes that is the difference. But yeah, like you said, all the stars aligned, and I've had years like that. When it rains, it pours. Sometimes it's like I can't do anything wrong. So
Right. Yeah, man. And I look at like this season specifically in Missouri, you know, like I don't want it to be construed like it was a tough season. Like, yeah, I shot 3 really good deer and but I had 4 shot opportunities at deer, and that's including the big deer that I was trying to get my scope on before I shot the one with a gun. So like actual true shot opportunities, I had 3 in 3 months of grinding, and I just happened to kill all of them. Which I also think that I think we talked, I don't know if we were recording yet or not, but like, we were saying like we're big on lessons learned, and a lesson that I've learned over the years is just being like on point in the red zone or whatever you want to call it. Like once you're in that, like I said, whatever you want to call it, red zone, like you're about to get that shot, whether it's 6 yards and he's feeding under the base of your tree, or if it's 70 yards in wind, like in anything in between, you just have to be dialed and just kill. You just have to make the kill. And I think that's like, I just remember when I was younger, I would mess up shots, miss shots, and I would go black out. And like, we all get excited, right? Like, we all get super excited, but that is maybe not as much of a lesson learned this year because I feel like that lesson was learned in previous seasons in life, but this was a huge uh like re-solidification in my mind of how important that is. Because like I said, 3 shot opportunities all season. You know how easy it is to mess up 1, 2, or 3 of those and be sitting here saying, yeah, I had a tough season, didn't shoot anything in Missouri this year. Um, like so close to that, so close to saying that. That's why I just want to I don't want to paint the picture of like daisies and rainbows of how I mean, don't get me wrong, it was amazing, but like it was so close to being a buckless year, and it's just that instinct to just make that kill when you're in the moment. That's another big thing that I've keyed in on a lot over the years.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, and same but different, but the mental aspect of hunting is huge. It's hard to overstate how important it is from the determination side and like the focus side in the moment. So
Yeah, definitely. It's like the most difficult thing too, like to have conscious control over yourself in those moments. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect because I get worked up. I mean, I love those moments. I get worked up, but
yeah, I
you
think
know,
everybody that does it, that's what you do it for. It wouldn't be
right,
fun if
100,
you
yeah,
didn't. Yeah.
exactly. But like I look at it, man, it's like all my shots this year were what I would deem fairly difficult shots. Like the mule deer was 70 yards crosswind. Um, and like I said, I got thrown off like a little bit at that very last second, but I felt like I executed a really good shot. The early season whitetail, I planned this and like I was literally like people might bash this, but I shot that the whitetail at 65, but I was literally shooting out to 95, a lot further than that, over 100, 2 hours earlier at the range. With I had my target out there. And I knew it was going to be a far shot because the way it was set up. So I was just dropping bombs, dropping bombs, dropping bombs. And when he stepped out, there was no doubt in my mind. It's not, and that's the thing is like I've passed 35-yard shots where no, like I don't think it just, it's kind of a feel thing. I've passed 35-yard shots that didn't feel right, and then I've taken 65, 70-yard shots that when they stepped out, I knew they were dead. And then like my 8 point, the rut buck, it was unranged. It was kind of, and I was like 2 or 3 yards off, but it was unranged and kind of a quick opportunity. Um, and I didn't make the greatest shot on that one. That's the only one I'm not that proud of. And then like the first rifle buck, like I said, that was a tough shot. The second rifle, the West Virginia buck, was kind of a cake shot. Like I was prone on a bipod. Like it was kind of a cake shot. But all the other ones, it was really like you don't have that first of all like ability and just that instinct. Like they could go wrong, really, really, really easily. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier for people that don't know, and like I said, maybe people will give you some hate. You did shoot competitive archery in college, and you're shooting year round all the time. And I know you put a ton of work into your shooting. So I think you know we could have the ethics debate there on shooting, and everybody's got their own opinion. But you're as prepared as you can be for those shots, is what I'm getting at.
Right, and and I've had those debates with close friends, people that don't know that well, and like I'm not like a long range shooter usually. I mean, until this season, I had never shot a whitetail buck over 26 yards
Oh wow,
ever. Like that was my furthest shot up until September of this year. It was 26 yards, and then it went to 65,
yeah,
and then I actually hit him with a follow up at 70. But again, it was just like I've passed shots half that distance where maybe he was alert or it's pouring down rain and you got to put it through a tight. I remember I passed on a buck one time in rain where I was almost positive I could kill him, but if something went wrong, I don't know if I would find him. Like that's just there's no point in doing any of that. So, you know, for me, I don't take a shot unless in my head it's like there's no way that deer is gonna die from this arrow right now. And like I said, I was literally shooting over 100 yards 2 hours prior and every day prior, and then I knew that buck was going to be somewhere. Like I said, I knew the trail he was going to come out on. I knew it was going to be between 50 and 70. That was the closest I can get without getting busted. And I just like, here's the deal. I'm either not going to shoot this deer. I'm either not going to shoot this deer from this far, and I'm going to move in and have a very, very high probability of busting him. Like 90% probability of busting him at a closer distance, or I can read the situation, pass the shot if it's not right, but have the confidence to make the shot if the conditions are right. And the conditions were right. He came out, everything was perfect. It was one of those, like, I don't know if you do this, but for me, I always have those conversations in my head, like, what's your max range if everything's like absolutely perfect? And then you're like, well, how often is everything actually absolutely perfect? But this was
Hardly
one of
ever.
those this was one of those situations where it's like level ground, good lighting, calm, some background noise, it's feeding, like I'm, like I'm not twisting, I'm perfectly square, like short footed, just, you know, perfect. Now, yeah, there's obviously like he can move and stuff. He didn't move at all. He just ate the arrow. I've missed deer 30 yards, sub 30 yards. I've missed deer that dodge my arrow. It's like, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. But when I released the arrow, I knew the deer was dead.
Oh, that confidence is huge. So, well,
Right.
Ethan, we're probably running up on time here, but I want to thank you for coming on again. Wanted to hear your stories firsthand. Had an amazing 2023 season, and I got a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of you here in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully, I've got some more stuff to post. I'm
So,
always hoping for a good next season. And,
yeah, you
so
set the bar pretty high.
yeah, after the last two seasons, I feel like I'm due for one of those where it's like, yeah, I hunted 180 days and killed one doe.
Yeah.
Like that's what I feel like I'm due for at this point. But I don't know. We'll see. You never know what the future holds. So I'm just excited to get back out there and just keep hunting. That's what I love more than anything else.
And then last thing before I cut you loose, is there anywhere you want to plug social media, YouTube, any of that stuff?
Yeah, the only thing I have is just my Instagram page, and it's really nothing fancy. It's just kind of like a library of the animals I shot, basically. And my Instagram is just my name, Ethan Escue, with an underscore in between is my username. So yeah, all the deer we talked about on here, they're posted on there. Deer from years past, and like I said, it's pretty much just a compilation of my life in the woods. So check out the pictures there, and that's about all I have out there.
All right, man. Well, thanks again, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep, I appreciate it, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on.